Diary of Lena Legrand. Date November 3rd, early hours. If you have found this diary, may God have mercy on your soul. I don't know how much time I have left. The walls have started whispering my name. The mirrors no longer reflect my whole face. I write for whoever comes next, so that you know what we are. We are Legrand, and we are cursed. The story of our family doesn't begin with love or honor. It begins with blood, ambition, and a name that should never be spoken aloud. This is the first account, the beginning of everything. The year was 1781, and his name was Alphonse Legrand. I'm not sure I believe everything they say about him, part legend, part man, but everything began with him. They say he was a cultured man, stern-faced, deep-set eyes, the kind that seemed to look through you. He wasn't handsome, nor was he ugly, just hard to forget. His house was known for two things: the constant silence and the library. Shelves from floor to ceiling, hundreds of books, many without titles on the spine, written in languages no neighbor could pronounce. Alphonse spent hours locked inside. He didn't work, didn't receive visitors, rarely stepped outside. When he did, he walked slowly, deliberately, always dressed in black, always wearing gloves, even in summer. The neighborhood respected him, or feared him perhaps. Some claimed they saw strange lights in the high windows during the night. Others swore they heard muffled chanting, in voices that didn't sound entirely human. He didn't care what they said, because Alphonse was searching for something that couldn't be found in the world of the living. Few dared to watch him, but that night someone did. A man whose name has been lost, but whose account remains, said he followed Alphonse out of sheer curiosity. He walked quickly, dressed in his usual dark overcoat, as if he knew exactly where he was going. The meeting took place in a narrow alley behind the old tailor's shop. There, under the flickering light of a gas lantern, Alphonse met a stranger, a tall, thin man, his face mostly hidden beneath an old-fashioned top hat. They exchanged few words. None were heard, but what stood out was what they carried. Each held a leather case. As they approached, Alphonse handed over his, and received the stranger's in return. According to the witness, as soon as the stranger gave Alphonse the case, he took 2 steps back, smiled faintly, and vanished into the shadows, as if the alley itself had swallowed him. Alphonse returned home that night with different eyes, the witness said. Deeper, emptier. Inside the case were papers, an old, scattered manuscript, loose pages folded, some stained with what looked like rust or dried blood. And in the center of it, a ritual, a symbol, and a name no one should ever speak again. Alphonse never spoke aloud about what was in those pages, but some notes and scribbles found later among his belongings reveal fragments of the ritual. He prepared the library room, moving all the furniture aside to clear space. On the floor, he drew symbols with white chalk, crooked lines that seemed to shift when the candlelight flickered. The candle was black, thick, and gave off a sharp scent that filled the air and burned the throat. Alphonse recited ancient words in a language no one else could understand. His voice was steady, but beneath it an imperceptible tremor betrayed fear. Then a shadow answered, a presence, something that wasn't there, but made itself felt, a cold running down the spine, a weight on the chest. He called that being by the name written in the manuscript, Belthar. The shadow seemed to smile, or perhaps it was Alphonse's mind playing tricks. That night, the silence of the Legrand house was broken only by the whisper of a promise, a pact sealed forever, and so the curse began. What followed that night was a dark silence, a dialogue never spoken aloud, only found in fragments of the manuscript and the veiled accounts left by Alphonse. They say Belthar didn't need words to understand what Alphonse sought. He already knew a knowledge infinite, the power to dominate, and riches beyond imagination. You want it all, whispered the shadow, a voice that seemed to echo inside Alphonse's mind. but this is a heavy burden for one soul alone. Vilthar proposed a price. Not only Alphonse's soul, but the souls of all his descendants, forever until the bloodline ended. Alphonse hesitated. Silence stretched between them. The weight of the decision crushed the air around them. But ambition won. Vilthar conjured an ancient book before him, black-covered and filled with empty pages that seemed to pulse under the faint light. With a trembling hand, Alphonse made a small cut on his index finger. Using a quill, he dipped it into the warm, fresh blood and signed the pact. That's how it all began, the curse that would haunt generations. With the power he gained, Alphonse quickly grew wealthy. Houses, lands, businesses. Soon he was the most influential man in the region. A name everyone knew, respected, and sometimes feared. He married a woman from the neighborhood, a young woman of humble origins, who believed she could bring some light into his life. They had 3 children, but not all survived. One of them died at birth. That night, Alphonse saw a shadow. It was not human, he knew. It was the demon silently lurking in the gloom. The mansion was enormous. Tall walls, endless corridors, and windows that let in a weak, cold light. The children, however, seemed to carry an invisible weight. They whispered of figures in mirrors, eyes watching them in the dark. The atmosphere inside the house was always dense, heavy, as if the air was charged with something beyond explanation. Alphonse, despite his success, had a difficult temper. He rarely showed affection, and his outbursts of anger were known throughout the town. People said that was an unhappy family, a family marked by the shadow of the past, even if no one knew exactly why. The illness came slowly, creeping in. Alphonse began coughing up blood in the autumn of 1809. The diagnosis came quickly: tuberculosis, a death sentence in those days. But I always doubted that version, not because of the coughing, but because of what followed. In his final months, he isolated himself in the library, muttering to no one, or to someone only he could see. One night, the servants heard him shouting, "But I am still young. I have much left to enjoy. Our pact was for power, for life." And then a voice, so they claimed, answered from nowhere. "You asked for knowledge. You asked for wealth. You never asked for health." When they finally broke down the door, Alphonse was dead, but it didn't look like a man who had died of consumption. His body was dry, withered, his eyes sunken, skin clinging to bone, as if something had drained everything from within. There was no blood, no smell of death, only silence, and a faint burned mark on the floor where once a circle had been. That was how the man who cursed our bloodline died, but the debt didn't die with him. After Alphonse's death, the manifestations ceased. For a time, the mansion remained. The fortune endured. His wife, though devastated, proved strong enough to carry on the empire he had built. The 2 daughters grew up surrounded by luxury, but not by joy. Misery clung to them like a thick fog. They never laughed much. They never slept well. And in time, the strange things returned. Whispers in empty halls, mirrors that seemed to reflect things that didn't belong to this world. The shadow had not left. It had only retreated, waiting for the next soul. The Legrand family holds secrets that were never meant to be written down. But that is another story.